Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Talking Point. My name is Sean Michael Small, and this is WESN, your content capital, the only station in the nation that broadcasts in HD. WESN, television with a difference. And of course, we're here to have the important conversation today. Just before we get into that, I will like to point out the phenomenon with regards to traffic yesterday. That was, it's interesting if the cause was merely, and this is one report says perhaps it was linked to the Lady Young Road being blocked by a falling tree or falling debris. If that's all it takes to cause all that traffic, I'm kind of worried. What would we do if we have a major emergency? We also saw a similar phenomenon a couple years back now, I think, where a sinkhole just before peaks right there on the turnoff from Wrightson Road, from the highway proper. Yeah, that more or less caused traffic across St. James and Woodbrook. You block 1 to 2 lanes and somehow major portions of Port of Spain gets blocked. And I'm sure that you could have similar phenomena in San Fernando, in Arima, in Chaguanas. Our road networks, I think, have reached capacity, or at least what we should consider reasonable capacity. And now comes the question with regards to planning moving forward. Or are we just going to let things, continue and hope for the best? Well, at least we could say that traffic like yesterday isn't necessarily a regular occurrence yet. However, now let's go into the daily review. And in a somewhat coincidence, we have two situations in Barbados and Tobago where passengers have been stranded, one with regards to airport difficulties, the other with regards to, safety standards on our local inter-island ferry. And I'm not entirely sure if it's comparable, because I don't necessarily know if the situation in Barbados was faulty runway lights, and this is an important safety factor. Airline accidents tend to be pretty serious more often than not. You don't have fender benders with planes, very often. They go from 0 to 60 real quick. So you don't want to take any risks, right? Even though conditions in the Caribbean are actually probably a lot safer in some respects than other parts of the world. Now the question is this the sort of thing that they would have had indicators to know it's going to fail soon, we should do maintenance, we should replace parts, we should check things out? Or is it the case where these sort of things, they will fail without much warning? Now, of course, perhaps then it goes into maintenance cycle and what have you. The reason why I bring that up is, with regards to the Tobago situation locally, I'm pretty sure we should have seen this coming, because I'm pretty sure that with regards to life vests and safety equipment on your ferry, you should have a current count. Not last year's count, not last month's count. You should have a current count. You should know that when we sail, we have enough equipment for max capacity, because the captain of the ferry, the ferry operator, the port authority cannot guarantee how many passengers are going to be on a ferry at any given time. They take standby passengers. The boat can be loaded. And here's a case where the boat was going to be loaded because there was an event. Now, maybe the people who arranged Panorama and Tobago did not necessarily check with the port authority. Fine. But even then, why was the ferry allowed to have less than its full complement of safety equipment? Are we trying to have a Titanic? Do we just assume that nothing bad will happen to the ferries and it'll be fine? Is somebody skimping on maintenance? And I could ask that same question with regards to the Bayesian lights. The only difference is I am not a Bayesian TV commentator, an analyst. I am a Trinbagonian TV commentator, an analyst. So I will leave Barbados to deal with their own issues. Now, to be fair, Trinities go to Barbados. So I'll ask the question, but it's up to Barbados to follow through. In TNT, I'll ask the question, and now, will we follow through? The thing is, though, it seems like a small thing, which is kind of sad that we've reached the point where major issues, more often than not, seem like minor matters because we have bigger major issues. I mean, paradise comes with some real strings attached. Meanwhile, there's also the fact that, so we did Panorama, I think it was the medium band category finals, I'm not entirely sure. I remember hearing about it and thinking, well, that's not necessarily something I would choose to do, but to be fair, it's nice to put national events in Tobago as well. I'm sure Tobagonians will agree. I'm not saying that we should do 50-50, that might not be practical, but what we can do, it's nice. Gives trainees an excuse to just travel to Tobago, to as much as a short hop for an event. But if you're going to do that, maybe you should ensure that the logistics of the inter-island ferry, the air bridge, maybe even hotel rooms, taxis, maxis, all of these things have the capacity to deal with your event. Because this is not an all schools competition. This is not Republic Bank having a retreat or some Prestige Holdings taking their employees to the beach. This is not a private event. This is I would like to think, a national event where the NCC would be somewhat involved. But I guess the NCC once again proves that perhaps even if you're not responsible for the decision, you have oversight. It's called being an adult, making sure that carnival festivities go off without a hitch and working together as a team. But like I said, I guess NCC not really, they just want to spend the money. They don't actually want to have to do the work, take all the glory if they can, whatever little pittance of a glory that the mass men leave behind for the NCC. We ought to move on. And this next topic, it's not a pleasant one, but it's one that we have to acknowledge. And that is, well, we are having more murders. And they're coming fast and furious. And we're not necessarily at 2 murders a day for the year yet. So we're not on pace for 600 yet. Based on some counts, this is not necessarily based on actual murders. We're assuming with the count, the last count we have is from yesterday. Our WSN head of news has 83 for yesterday, so that would have been at 45 days, 83, so we're underneath 2 a day. But it doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture because there have been violent incidents that wouldn't be counted in the murder rate. And then, of course, we assume, as I was saying, that all of the murders have been counted. And they don't have missing persons who wind up dead a few weeks later that are already been murdered. One of them, I believe, a police officer's relative, police officer's son, was gunned down. And some of these stories, we don't have all the context. Okay, young man is 21. He is in his car. He's washing his car, and his assailant appears, chased him inside of his house. Why? We don't know. More often than not, the parents say that the victim was not involved. Sometimes that does not turn out to be true. He is the son of a police officer. It could be that it was a reprisal against his father or his parent. We don't know. But this is just one more murder. in a string of murders over the weekend into this week. And we're not necessarily seeing anything said about it. Meanwhile, at the CARICOM meeting that's happening this week, the head of CARICOM has indicated that illegal guns into the region are being traced back into the US. And this is something that was revealed to us way back when, that it's not through the sea borders, the porous maritime borders, where the guns are coming from. They're coming from legal ports of entry. I have seen footage of a couple of pistols, I believe, being intercepted on National Geographic. I saw this. We played the clip here. Pistols were being intercepted from a small backpack or carry-on suitcase headed towards Trinidad. It was intercepted in Miami. So I know that it happens. And to be fair, when we see the guns confiscated, we don't see Eastern European Soviet-era assault rifles. What we see is modern composites that were probably manufactured either in the US or Europe. We don't necessarily have that level of trade with Europe, that regular, frequent trade. We do with the US. So it's not evidence, it's just what I think a reasonable assumption. Perhaps we need to start engaging more with the American federal authorities to try to solve this problem. Then again, I would make the case that we probably have so much guns on the streets already, it really doesn't matter if we interdict any more guns. So what if the TTPS interdicts, 10 more assault rifles coming in? They probably have more than enough assault rifles to do damage in TNT already. So the question is, and I'm not going to knock the police for interdicting on guns to prevent any more coming in, but that's probably less than half the battle at this point. What are we doing about the guns that are still out there? Because we have seen with the robbery at Grand Bazaar from the Pennywise, the van carrying their cash, we've seen that some criminals are foolish enough to go full tilt with regards to violence in broad daylight, in the middle of a heavy trafficked road with a lot of civilians, to ambush some security guards. The escalation has more or less already happened. What are we doing to keep up? Final story, and it's interesting to see what the regional energy outlook will be moving forward. Because you do have, of course, there's Guyana with its, now tapped potential, now tapped resources. Then you have the rest of the region. For the most part, you have resources here and there, not to that level. But there's always the thought about what happens when it runs out. What will we do for energy? To some extent, nobody knows what the global landscape is going to look like, right? So we don't know how are we going to get, when renewables happen, what infrastructure do we have to develop, which is the best one, etc., etc. Our Prime Minister is confident, I think, on two things: that TNT could be a hub for energy in the region, and that the region has untapped potential for renewables. The problem is unlocking it. The problem is capital. But the development has to be balanced with the needs of the now, because that's needs for the future, for the most part. We don't need a solar farm now, but we need to balance off the needs of the now with investment towards the future, because we don't want to wait for the oil and gas to run out or to get too expensive because it's so rare. And power gen is more or less saying, hey, the price of electricity just got, 4 times higher, as we saw in Germany years ago. And that's part of the course of balancing renewables. But we still have to invest in it now. So the outlook of the region, folks, it's something that we'll keep an eye on here and Talking Point. Potentially, if we play our cards right, it's not about taking advantage of other people, but it is about being leaders in the new phase of the energy industry. We could do it if we're serious about planning and implementation. Two things that we're usually not that serious about. But let's take a pin in that. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have our Wednesday commentator to get into a deeper dive in certain aspects of the economy that has been bothering her for some time. Of course, I'm speaking with Karen Shishera. She'll be with me when we come back.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at Southern Main Road, McBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Public Bank Steel Orchestra presents the power of Pan and Kaiso. Carnival Monday at 1 p.m. and Carnival Tuesday at 7 a.m. from Central Bank along the Brian Lara Promenade, Independence Square, Port of Spain. Tickets cost $250. Available at the Pan Yard, Eastern Main Road, St. Augustine, and at Radical Designs outlets nationwide. Republic Bank Steel Orchestra, the power of Pan and Kaiso.
Welcome back to Talking Point. And of course, on Wednesdays, we are joined by the lady with a good smile, the former Minister of Finance, attorney at law, legal scholar, author. She has taught most parliamentarians that are lawyers their knowledge of the law. Unfortunately, they didn't seem to pay attention enough in her class. But that's a whole other story. I am, of course, welcoming Mrs. Karen Shishera. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Sean. And I have to take a little bit of that back because I meet so many of them. And my usual thing is when they don't care for you, they try to avoid you. And so, my God, that's her. Let's pretend we didn't see her. But I have to say that generally speaking, I get a very positive response. And up to the other day, someone said to me, you taught me, you know. I said, I taught you? Okay.
Well, there is one very, very, very currently infamous former AG. I'll leave it right there. Maybe he should have paid more attention. So we wanted to do a deeper dive. There's some aspects of TNT's economy, despite some good news from the energy sector. We have not necessarily realized it, despite it's difficult for me to describe because what's going on in Ukraine is horrible, but we are benefiting from it as a energy producing nation, despite having dwindling resources in that field. But despite these things, there's still concerns about the economy. And you've had these for quite a few weeks now, but we've always had other important topics to discuss. But now we finally get a chance to discuss it, as the Prime Minister has now gone off to an energy conference, and then we'll meet with CARICOM, and some of these things, of course, will matter. But there are local issues that concern you with regards to unemployment, with regards to labor force participation, and most importantly, and we'll get into this topic, with regards to income inequality, which is it's an interesting statistic. I have my thoughts about that theory, but I'll let you have the first word.
Yeah, okay, but I think the recent participation of our Prime Minister in the energy conference in Ghana was sending a good message, because I think, if I could recall on the last occasion, when they did have a conference, he said he had to go to Europe to attend some other conference. So this time around, he's put it at the top of the agenda. And part of it, I'm sure, is what I would say, I'll have to be more, last time I think I gushed a little bit too much, because I was very excited about the prospects of monetizing the gas on the Dragon field, which has, I don't know how you quantify, but it certainly is a lot. And the capacity for Trinidad and Tobago to be able to have access to that, especially for the downstream industry, is fantastic. Of course, you know that the United States has put a 2-year license on it. They've said that there's not going to be any exchange except of any cash transactions between Venezuela, PDVSA, and Trinidad. So I don't know if that put a little damper on it. And the fact that you have a 2-year period, I don't know if that's sort of like having something hanging over your head. So I'm not too sure about that prospect. But the Prime Minister has said, and I don't think that he is wrong to say, that all this talk about moving away from carbon source of energy, we have to be mindful that it's here for a good while. It's going to be here for a good while. And he did point out to Europe having to revert to coal of all things. I mean, you can't get worse than coal for carbon emissions. That's the bottom of the heap. And they did do that when the wind energy failed them. So I think with LNG has come to the forefront with the whole Ukraine-Russian war, and that's a geopolitical war that I don't think is going to end very soon. So there's a lot of opportunity for Trinidad, because we have been a leader in LNG for several years. So we have the expertise. So on that end, I think the Prime Minister has reason to be upbeat. It takes time to monetize that. It takes time to be able to access all of these potential sources of natural gas, which is really a feedstock for the downstream industry. But it's still a positive news. On the other hand, however, I don't know if you've been watching or looking at the prices of oil and gas. What is the most troubling is natural gas. Natural gas has gone below $3, and it's consistently under $3, which is what we had budgeted on. I checked today, $2.55, and I think it's about, that's a bit troubling to me that they've been able to have the price of natural gas so depressed, especially since we do not know what the terms and conditions of the deal that was made with Venezuela with regard to purchasing their natural gas, similarly with Texas. So, that is a little bit of a damper. And then again, we have the Prime Minister coming out again for the umpteenth time and talking about selling the Petrotrin, the refinery. Finally, he brings it back up. So therefore, you wonder why he closed it down. I know the old arguments about how they had a bond payment that was due, and that whatever, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they simply were not going to be able to satisfy it. But know. There's a lot we don't know. So having said all of that, I'm trying just to put things within a context. And I think that things should be looking up, not immediately, but things should be looking up. The days of green energy are not here with us today yet. We are still going to be dependent on natural gas as the cleanest form of carbon energy. And so the Trinidad has a lot to benefit still. I guess what you had asked me to address, having said all of that, how is that going to impact the socioeconomic development of Trinidad and Tobago, and more importantly, how is it going to impact on closing that income inequality gap? Because I will stop there just to say that the United Nations in the 2020 vision and now 2030 has put as one of the major goals for developing countries is closing the income inequality gap, because that is a recipe for social unrest. And it also is a recipe for economic, for the country not to develop as it should. And the concern is that there's nothing that the government has done thus far that has made me feel, many other people feel, that they are doing enough to create an entrepreneurial sector of micro, small, and medium, micro and small enterprise, so that they can participate in the economy. In fact, it seems that the focus is on a very tiny minority where they want to benefit from the revenue, and that's not a good thing.
Well, I'll be honest. I do agree that we need more micro and small entities coming up, if only that we could get more innovation, because by giving more people opportunity, we could get more ideas for goods and services that, if we relied on the big companies who, for the most part, they're not necessarily looking to take all the risks, but we might get more good business operators, good ideas coming out, might get new products, new ways to do things that would make our economy run more efficiently. There's a whole host of benefits if you allow the whole mechanism to run its course. I will say that income inequality is not necessarily just on its own what concerns me. What concerns me is not so much the gap, but the lower level. If people at the lower level get poorer, right? If income inequality gets wider, but the poor getting richer, I'm a little bit okay, It's not necessarily perfect. There might be some problems down the road that we have to sort out. But the problem is that the people at the bottom are getting poorer. That's where the gap is widening. It's not because the rich are just getting richer faster. And that is more concerning to me, because even in the States, the cost of living is a serious issue right now. And I think they're even looking to institute new taxes similar to here. And the argument is, how are people going to afford that with the current cost just for their food bill similar to here? But the refinery, I think, if we did not have the debt, I believe it's the debt, the loans they used to wind up Petrotrin to pay out severance. And I don't know, why did we have to use the refinery as collateral for that? If I'm mistaken, then someone could correct me. But I do believe all of the issues with the refinery is that one can make an argument maybe the government should, take on that burden because they made the decision to close down Petrotrin. And perhaps that might make Petrotrin more viable if the purchaser does not also have to deal with the debt to pay off Petrotrin workers' severance.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, but I think maybe I'm not being clear as to why the income inequality is such a big issue. And by the way, when we look at the inflationary trends in the United States and in UK, it's different from what's happening in Trinidad.
Yeah.
That is why the central bank has not raised the repo rate. The repo rate is your borrowing rate. And usually when there's too much money circulating in an economy, what the Fed in America and the equivalent in the United Kingdom will do is increase interest rates so less money is circulating in the economy, and then you tighten up the ability to have money circulating, and therefore less money chasing after too few goods, and you therefore increase the price of goods, and increase the price of goods, and increase the price of mortgage. In the short term, it may seem being difficult, but that is in order to dampen inflationary trends. So what they are experiencing in America and in the United Kingdom is different from us. They have experiencing persons who for 2 years were not able to spend. They're getting a demand for goods and services has just exploded, and to large part, they are countries that are food secure, by and large. Yes, they do import dairy and wheat from in the United Kingdom, not so much United States. They're more with the energy. I think they are trying to get that under control, but a lot of the inflation that you're seeing in the United States is demand pull, meaning people have pent up spending. There's money, they got those stimulus checks. They were under COVID restrictions, and now they're able to go out there and spend. In fact, I'm sure you saw that a lot of the restaurants, the chains, couldn't get people to come out and work because the difference between what they were getting with the stimulus check and what these jobs were paying them was not very encouraging. So a lot of them decided to stay home. So their problems with inflation are not the problems that we have. Our problem with inflation is driven mostly by food inflation, and that's because we import 80% of our food. And that is because our food bill, at least the last figures from the central bank that I am aware of, said $5.7 billion TT, I believe, that we import in food of a small country like ours. So when you look at the drivers of inflation in Trinidad and Tobago, you wonder to what extent it is what you call not demand pull, but it's cost push. So there are a lot of people who the price of food is not because they're making fabulous salaries, not because they have all this pent up money that they needed to spend and couldn't spend. It is because they simply are not able. Food prices have gone through the window, and they've gone through the window because we are importing most of our food. And then the flooding certainly did not help. I don't know which ministry is responsible, whether it's public utilities, whether it's planning and development. I don't know which ministry is responsible, but I look at places like Holland, where about 1/3 to 2/3 of their land is underwater, and they have two rivers passing through their country, and somehow they're able to implement and enforce the laws. And a lot of the flooding in Trinidad that was avoidable are very much avoidable, and we pay the price. Not only do the farmers pay the price, but we at the grocery pay the price. I mean, I don't even want to, somebody told me cabbage was $65 a pound. I mean, pumpkin, you couldn't buy pumpkin. Chive, everything went through the window, and this is food. You're not talking about luxury items, you're talking about food. And you take that together with the minimum wage. It's not a living wage. We don't get a living wage. Many of the people working in the lower income sector, they don't even have a living wage. And you take that lack of a living wage and add to it an inflation rate, according to Dr. Hussain, that from 2015 to today went up by 46%. So you are paying 46% more for food. Your salary has not increased. And you still, even though we do not have the exact problems of energy that other countries have, transportation costs have gone up. Because why? We're not producing diesel, we're not producing gas, we're importing. And you know the whole scandal with Paria. Paria could not pay for their gas supplies because they simply were not being given any money from the Ministry of Finance in order to pay their creditors. So when you look at all of those factors, you have to look at how is it that we have reached a stage where we have so many of our people living at the bottom and more reaching there, because you have to understand something also, Sean. It's not just a question that they are at the bottom of the scale, but there's no way for them to come out.
Right.
There's no way there's no out for them. And when you have a prime minister who says to you, what is wrong with the rich getting richer? I mean, nobody is against anybody becoming wealthy, but what you want to make sure is that there is sufficient opportunity for those who want to participate in the economy, that they get a chance, and they're not being given a chance. They're being crowded out. When these people at the top end, they get everything. Everything goes to them, and you know I am speaking the truth.
Yes,
Everybody knows I'm speaking the truth. So how could you possibly, as a government, you know, if I could make an analogy as a parent, you know, as a parent, you have 8, 9 children. You might have a favorite child, but my God, what about the 4 or 5 who's struggling to make it? What are you doing? You're giving everything to that one. So how can I possibly come out of my poverty? And this is where the government is failing. So the point I'm making is people are saying, it's not me alone, I've read it elsewhere, people have said that they all this revenue potential that the country is going to get, who is going to be the beneficiaries of it? Is it going to be the same old? And that cannot be good for the country.
Well, we have to take a break. We'll come back to that point, and I especially want to underline the opportunity to make it out of the hard and difficult circumstances. I think there's a lot with regards to that line alone. We'll talk about that, as well as what Karen was now getting into. Where will the benefits of our windfalls really be going when we come back after the break here? Stay tuned, more Talking Point after this.
It's a fantastic February at Massage Haven as we celebrate Valentine's Carnival and our 1-year anniversary. For the entire month of February, take advantage of our special packages. For Valentine's, show your love with our Lovebirds and I Just Adore You packages. Carnival, let's help you glow with 20% off on all sauna and massage combos. And as we turn 1 year old, special complimentary Massage Haven tokens of gratitude and keepsakes within our anniversary week. Massage Haven, 157B, Monroe Road, Cunupia.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com. Public Bank Steel Orchestra presents the power of Pan and Kaiso. Carnival Monday at 1 p.m. and Carnival Tuesday at 7 a.m. from Central Bank along the Brian Lara Promenade, Independence Square, Port of Spain. Tickets cost $250. Available at the Pan Yard, Eastern Main Road, St. Augustine, and at Radical Designs outlets nationwide. Republic Bank Steel Orchestra, the power of Pan and Kaiso.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And I have Karen Shishera with me. We're talking about the current economic outlook of the island. We had some good news. There is currently some bad news with the price of natural gas. And it's interesting because the war is still going on. So perhaps the world has now reached a new balance point and we just have to figure out and deal with $2. $2 per measurement, per unit. But locally, we do have an issue with regards to the cost of food driving inflation, people potentially being priced out of buying certain food stuff. And Karen has brought up the fact of the lack of opportunity. And to me, one of the easiest examples of that, or at least one of the easiest ways to explain that, the low-hanging fruit would be just to point out the ease of doing business. To what extent How many people do you know that have a small business find it hard to get it off the ground? They want to do the legal and right thing, but the bureaucracy is so not just difficult to navigate, but it's almost as though it's set up to work against you, to make your life harder. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure big corporations either have the resources or the relationships, or at the very least the respect of the name to get their stuff pushed through and not have to deal. The CEO of big corporation X, big bank Y, does not have to go stand in line to get some paperwork to register some new company or subdivision or what have you. That's just not happening.
Have established yourself as a business for quite a long time. You can't really expect to see you come to
But Karen, we can't expect the bureaucracy though to give, to have some respect for the little guy trying to start up something.
That's what I'm about to say. So I just try to be balanced in saying that. So, but what it does seem to me, and I know of examples personally, it's almost as though it's there set up to make sure that you don't ever get through. Every time there's some new excuse, who is supposed to give the permission? Health officer, he's not here today. No, you have to come back this day, and it's a ring. I mean, it's almost telling you after a while. I know people have tried over a year and they've given up in frustration and in tears. And I'm pretty certain it's the big boys pick up the phone and say, listen, I need so and so, and they get it done. Now that can't be right. So what we're talking about, if it's ease of doing business, you want to encourage those who are trying to get into the market. The market is not just, and let me just say on that, there are two things I wanted to say on that, because we had mentioned it a few times. This is called labor force participation. When you look at the CSO data, which is what I did look at, they tell you that the more important than the low unemployment rate, which, by the way, includes social programs. So when they say the unemployment rate is low, it includes CPEP workers, URP workers, it includes all those social programs, number one. Number two, there's a clear definition of what is a person who's unemployed. There's a time frame, and they have to be actively looking for a job. It doesn't mean they have a job either. And so that, again, can be very misleading. You're thinking the person has a job. No, the person is actively looking for a job, and it has to be within a thing. So if it's 6 months and he stopped looking after 6 months, then it would not be counted among the unemployed. He come out of that fact thing. Yes. So that is also, that is part of the definition. And then, but when you look at the labor participation rate, that is the great, and the CSO tells you that. It tells you the greater or the more important data is your labor participation rate. What it means is those persons who are actively looking to participate in the economy. Because it is GDP is your gross domestic products, what you produce in a year, probably a fiscal year that a country produces. And the more persons that participate in the production of goods and services, the more that the economy should do well. So the higher the participation rate of the citizens, supposedly then you'll get a higher GDP outcome. Trinidad and Tobago, and the lower your participation rate is, what it is saying to you is that people have stopped looking. There's a reason why they are not looking for jobs. And I looked at some of the data, and I saw for Trinidad, it is from the CSO data, the quarter 3 of 2022, it says 55%. That is low. Because you look at other countries, Barbados, yes, I hate you to talk about Barbados, but I have to mention 72% is their participation rate. You look at other countries in the 70s, at least in late 60s, 70s, some in the 80s. So it means that people who are they are participating in the economy. So you have to ask yourself, why is it that their participation rate is so low in this country? And it's not good enough to people to say Trinidadians lazy, they don't want to work. That's the easy answer. What I really want to tell you is this. they prefer to take the undocumented Venezuelans who nearly every week up to last week, you had something with some Venezuelans involved in some quasi-criminal activity. They seem to specialize involved in criminal activity. In any event, undocumented ones I'm talking about. And you have so many of them, they don't pay NIS because they're being paid under the table. Is that right for the Trinidad? So you get discouraged. Why are you going to try and get a work job in a construction site when you're competing with an undocumented Venezuelan who will undercut you and who won't tell the boss you have to pay NIS? The boss glad not to pay the NIS. Who has access to you? Some of them actually, I know of a fact, some of them actually leave Venezuela on the boat to come here to use our free medical services, not only the doctors, but actually medication. They are not English speaking, they are not CARICOM members, they belong to the continent of Latin America. Why is it that they turn to us with a population? We don't have, even the Prime Minister in the early days had said, let them go United States, let them go Latin America, there's a space. We only 1.4 million people. What you're doing, in my respectful opinion, part of the problem with the labor participation rate being low is that there's very little incentive. One, your salaries are weak, poor, your food bill is, you can't make the food. This is not something you want to do. You have to eat. And you have children that you have to feed. Then to send them to school. Where's the money to send them to school? And when you are dealing with all of that, a lot of people decide to withdraw from the participation because you've got to find out why is it that there's such a low participation rate. And a part of it is the competition from the undocumented Venezuelans. And let me just make this point. When they had a lot of immigrants coming in, two sets of immigrants. Yeah. After World War II, millions of men died because those are the ones who were facing the front lines, not women. Millions of men died. So after the World War II, they had a big Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. They did not have the manpower. So they brought in the people from their own colonies to come and build back Europe, to do all the jobs that not that the people didn't want to either, but that needed to be done, right? It wasn't charity, it was to serve their purpose. The second point I will make is that a lot of the immigrants that are coming to Europe, these are former colonies. You were there, that's why they're coming there. You were in their country, you exploited their country, you took what you wanted out of their country, you changed their language, you changed they tried to change their culture. And yet when you get the backlash of it, you don't want it. So you cannot compare the immigrant position of places like Europe with us, even United States. Texas and all of a major part of America was part of Mexico, as you will know after the wars. So the point I'm making is, and the point I'm trying to make is, why are they coming here? They're coming here. It does not help with our situation. And why is the government encouraging it? Why are the employers encouraging it? The employers are encouraging it because they can pay less salaries. They can pay, some of them not paying any NIS. How are they not contributing to the problem? And how is the government turning a blind eye to something like that? They have to be turning a blind eye because all of us know about it. If all of us know about it, then they must know about it. You know, and it is very troubling to me to see, and so that goes with the undocumented Venezuelans. The other part, which people do not want to face, is that you have, apart from the crime increase coming out of Venezuela, all these unlicensed guns, where are they coming from? Out of Venezuela. I mean, why are we pretending we don't know the problem is Venezuela? Why don't we stop pretending we don't know that is the problem? You know, and you are telling me that I have to come and the other part, of course, is that a lot of these people, because their salaries simply cannot take care of them basic needs, their basic requirements, they are going to get involved in the informal sector. And therefore they are a large catchment of Trinidadians and maybe the undocumented Venezuelans who are involved in the drug and money laundering trade. And you cannot tell me the government does not know that.
Well,
so you aren't going to make opportunities to take these people out of their poverty, create opportunities for them to become entrepreneurs. Because guess what? Every single business, nearly every business in this country is owned by a 2% of this country.
Well,
that cannot be good.
There's two things. One with regards to the labor market, but also with regards to the frustration of people trying to set up small businesses. So with the ease of doing business and the labor market, I think both of those things, either one on their own, but both of those things together especially, are reasons enough for some serious public sector reform. Because with regards to the labor market, I actually think that there are a couple of things that the public sector did a disservice to the economy of TNT. One is the fact that there's a reason why a lot of people want to get government jobs. The security of a government job, not a contract work. We've seen that the government has moved on to contract work, but it seems as though the trend of wanting a government work, they'll still take the contract job over a private job. And because of that, and because of the lack of accountability in the public sector, I've seen this in Tobago especially, where it actually causes the labor market to just not care. If I have a boss and my boss actually wants to hold me accountable for my mistakes, I'll just leave and bounce around until I get a government job, because all of the private sector is struggling, at least small and medium businesses, to get enough workers. So the market now is giving leeway for people to do whatever they want. And I'm not saying that they should not have the right to leave a job. You could have an abusive, bad working conditions, an abusive boss, etc. But it caused now a phenomenon where the workers had just maybe too much power because it was difficult to get good workers. The other thing with regards to the, another indicator with regards to the public sector reform is needed. I don't know if CPEP is a much more respectable job than working at a fast food outlet. But I do know for an untrained worker, you will make more money in the fast food outlet than in CPEP. Now, maybe the hours in CPEP might be better. Maybe you just don't want to work. You want to be part of a gang and you sitting down for 2 to 3 hours and then you go home and you take the small money. And you don't want to actually have to work in a fast food outlet for more money.
Not to take this. No.
But my point is, there's a reason why. There's a reason why people want CPEP jobs more than fast food workers' jobs.
Because they have another job lined up. And the other job lined up is in informal sector. And by the way, just because I think we're coming up to the hour, not the hours yet, this idea of if the rich get richer, then we all, the country benefits.
Well,
that has been proven.
No.
Right. So that's what the Prime Minister says. So he justifies a small, tiny group in this country owning nearly every single thing and talking about this trickle-down economics, which has been disproven time and time again. It was disproven. I actually went and looked it up with Thatcher, where they said that I actually brought the data to show that Thatcher increased bank loan. She had low inflation, but the inflation fell because unemployment raised tremendously. Then when Reagan tried his version, the government debt increased from 997 billion to 2.85 trillion in 8 years. He also massive government spending, also 2.5%. So they said they didn't know what caused it. Then George Bush, when he came in, unemployment rose to 1.6%. So that whole idea of trickle down, IMF has actually said, they have made a statement. The IMF says that the trickle down economics does not benefit the low and middle income in the country, and a mere income increase in wealth of only 1%. So this idea of you putting the money in 1% or 2% hands and telling me, okay, you will eventually benefit. It has been disproven by the IMF, everything. And you have a prime minister who keeps telling these people, keep your little URPs here. You know why? because I'm making sure you will vote for me because you need a CPAP job. And also, too, you are available for the informal sector. That's what it's all about.
That's the other thing. The dependency, part of the population is dependent on the government. They're not used to having to pull themselves out of whatever hole they happen to find themselves in. Sometimes
they're not being given a chance.
Exactly.
My God, they're not given a chance.
But I just want to say this with regards
so don't say they're not used to.
With regards to trickle-down economics, it's interesting. One of the reasons why communism fails instead of capitalism is when you have too few people trying to control too much of the money. And when you try to do trickle-down economics, the irony is you're getting a similar situation to that. The 1% is really less than 1% with regards to the actual control. If too few people control the money, they can't manage it as effectively to meet the needs of society.
Not they can't manage it. You know what they say they do with it? They don't reinvest in the economy. What they do, they buy stocks and shares. They've shown it. They're not interested in the man in the street. And what I'm saying is it is so unfair to say, we always do.
We have to break for news. But it's the same. It's two different sides of the same coin, Karen. I'm agreeing with you. But we have to break for news here on WSN.
All right.
When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. Folks, we'll be right back.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Health Ministry launches COVID prevention, detection and system response. 5 more succumb to COVID-19. Prime Minister says Point-a-Pierre refinery available to restart. And internationally, 3 dead in New Zealand cyclone. Now for the details. The Ministry of Health advises that the main objective of the consultancy in relation to COVID-19 is to review and assess the country's public health response of the COVID-19 pandemic in relation to the health system pillars set out by the World Health Organization's international health regulations. In accordance with these pillars, the country's public health response will be assessed utilizing 4 core areas, which outlines key technical areas. The result of this assessment will assist in developing the health sector's resilience, inform responses to future pandemics, and contribute to operational readiness as it relates to future disasters and emergencies. Meanwhile, the ministry released the COVID-19 dashboard for the last week. 5 more persons succumbed to the virus, taking the death toll to 4,336. 312 new cases were recorded. The rolling 7-day average for new cases is 45, while the figure for deaths is 1. There are currently 42 people hospitalized with the virus at this time. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says the Point-a-Pierre refinery is available for restart. He made the statement while delivering his address at the Guyana Energy Expo on Tuesday.
Trinidad and Tobago, which was importing most of its crude oil and creating refined products for its domestic needs and for the regional market. This import and refine model was being carried on with significant loan support from the National Treasury.
In international news now, New Zealand's Prime Minister says Cyclone Gabrielle, which for days battered the North Island, is a weather event not seen in a generation. Government earlier declared a state of emergency, only the 3rd in New Zealand's history. At least 3 people have died. About a third of the population in the country of 5 million live in affected areas. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Republic Bank Steel Orchestra presents the power of Pan and Kaiso. Carnival Monday at 1 p.m. and Carnival Tuesday at 7 a.m. from Central Bank along the Praia and Lara Promenade, Independence Square, Port of Spain. Tickets cost $250. Available at the Pan Yard, Eastern Main Road, St. Augustine, and at Radical Designs outlets nationwide. Republic Bank Steel Orchestra, the power of Pan and Kaiso.
Welcome back to Talking Points, and of course, if you are now joining us, we just had a conversation on a lot of different aspects of the economy, the ease of doing business. Generally speaking, what we were getting at was the fact that our economic outlook, particularly for people at the lower economic bracket, it's not necessarily looking good, at least in the short term. Maybe all of the negotiating and schmoozing and whining and dining and conferences and meetings that the Prime Minister is doing in the long run, they could pay off. They could pay off. But right now, we do have to be concerned with the fact that chicken is slowly but surely becoming a luxury item in the grocery right now, at least in my opinion. So we've had that long discussion. I also mentioned before Karen joined me with regards to our murder rate. You know, it's not necessarily all that bad, but it's bad enough. It's bad enough, and we're not necessarily seeing much about it. The influx of guns, Karen has said it's coming in from Venezuela. The head of CARICOM is saying guns are coming in from the US. I actually think probably both are true. The question is, what are we doing about the guns already here? Anyway, with all that said, we're going to open up the phone lines. Call in, let us know what you think with regards to what Karen had to say. And if you have anything you would like to talk of course, Carnival is happening. And Carnival is happening. We just had an interesting phenomenon in Port of Spain yesterday. If you want to talk about that and your experiences about that and what you think about that. Because this is not the first time something that should not have interrupted the lives of, tens of thousands of people did interrupt the lives of tens of thousands of people. So call and let us know what you have to think. We have a... Yes. I don't know. There's a tree. One tree caller. I think I was behind you going home. Anyway, we have a caller from San Juan. San Fernando. Caller, good morning.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Karen.
Morning.
I listened to the Prime Minister on that, giving a speech in Guyana. It seemed to me that he's on a sales trip to try and salvage something for Trinidad and Tobago because our economic situation is not well. With respect to the food inflation, I need to say this. There's less economic activity in the construction sector that drives a lot of jobs in the lower end of the market. And so that is contributing to the fact that we have a bigger working poor in Trinidad and Tobago. And let me say this about the food inflation. I looked at the market, because I go in the market every week. During November and December, I stood up in the market with a couple of vendor friends of mine. And people were coming to the market and leaving with their bar empty because they could not afford. It was one of the most heartbreaking things to see in Trinidad and Tobago, that people could not afford to buy goods in the market. And when we reach to that level, we have to look at our government and say, you all are not doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I mean, it's a complicated situation, but the long and short is, I think ultimately he's right. The mechanics of how we got to that point where the local market is too expensive, I'm not entirely sure of, but I will say is, if more effort was done with regards to agriculture, and I'm not saying giving out grants, and this is the thing, it seems as though the governments of the day, not just this government, all they tend to do is give out grants or things. Look, we support an X, we give out a grant. No, it's about things like ease of doing business. It's about things like setting up the infrastructure so, as Karen said, opportunity could be granted to people to farm. Not giving out grants so you could deal with some of their bills today. What about their bills tomorrow?
I'll tell you two things that they could have were avoidable. One, the flooding, because that had a lot to do with the price of a lot of this stuff, and definitely there was no enforcement of our flooding or whatever rules are, environmental rules, and that's one thing. And secondly, the governor of the central bank has spoken about it. Our huge import bill, 5.7 billion. We do not need to be importing that amount of food. We need to be producing far more food, and there are different things, glass houses. There are lots of other alternatives to where we don't have to reach to this point. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
We didn't have to reach to this point.
We have a caller from Mayaro who I think might want to weigh in on this very same topic. Good morning, Mayaro.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
And good morning, Miss Karen. This is your farmer here, Miss Karen. Miss Karen, I want to tell you something. You actually hit a lot of good facts and reality that hitting the small man on the ground. And that is the farmer. And I always tell you, Miss Karen, you have the eyes and the ears. And what they don't like is your smile. Because you remain humble with the facts and bring out the truth to the people. Because I've been crying out, and Sean know that.
So, hello? Oh, I think we might have lost. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on, I think he might still be with us. Okay, it looks like we lost him. Caller from Arrow, you could call in and you could finish your point. I think more or less we lost you, just as you said, I've been crying out. So you're now going to make the point or the issue. You're now going to bring up the issue you wanted to bring up when we lost you. But I kind of have an idea. The caller from Mayara, that caller from Mayara, I should say, I believe he is connected to the agricultural sector. So he has seen some of the issues firsthand, as well as he's from Mayara, so he's seen some of the issues with regards to Mayaro and what the rains and the floods did to the roads down there firsthand as well. But yeah, the system was set up, as you were saying, Karen, to not work. And I think the problem is we haven't necessarily had people in charge to really try proper plans. It seems as though we just kind of keep doing the same old thing and then want to blame the people when it doesn't work out. Oh, we gave them grants and it didn't work. They have to sort themselves out. Well, it's not just about sorting themselves out. Like you said, it's about the fact that the systems are not, it's almost like sometimes I was working against you. You can hear me, Karen?
I think that's it. I think if I would just summarize, I think that it's time that the government puts at the top of the agenda food security and make that, and as well as opportunities for under a priority for the government. And if they were to do so, we would see a reduction in our food import bill. We'd see a reduction in the supermarket prices, and we will see people who want to be farmers or involved in the agro-industry really being able to benefit in a real meaningful way. I think the government needs to do that.
We have a call on the line from
That's my opinion.
Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Yes, hi, you're live.
Yes. You talk about local prices in the market. But I explained this to you on a number of occasions, that the law is already there. The amount of land governments have tenanted out for farming, which are not routine, and you have extension officers supposed to be seeing with that. You have lands, good agricultural lands, that we are putting for housing without planning permission, and these things make a major thing. You talk about the problem on Lady Young. If you examine Lady Young, you will see that is a result of government destroying the infrastructure on the road, where you had road authorities. On Lady Young, if you look at the drainage, you see the drainage are independent on each side of the road. The water is supposed And that is not the major problem. The major problem there is illegal construction going up the hill from Belmont right up to the top of Lady Young. And one day that whole Lady Young is going to end up in Belmont. And then we're going to talk about act of God. Right? You know, this thing about the trickle-down economy. Although it has proven not to work, but like anything else, there's an element of truth in it. The element of truth in it is that in the better countries, especially capitalist countries, your taxation system must be a progressive system where the rich pay at a higher rate. We have such a system, and we have destroyed it. Our top rate of income tax was about 80%. We have cut that in two. We think that supporting the rich. Any questions, gentlemen?
No, Professor. We have another caller right behind you, so we have to. But thank you for that that point with regards to the Lady Young. I'll comment on that. It's not a question. I very much agree with you. But we have another caller. Thank you from Gasperlo. Good morning, caller. Hi, morning, caller. I think you need to.
Morning.
Okay, we lost the caller. I don't know what that was. If that was feedback, it didn't necessarily sound like feedback I was accustomed to. But Karen, yesterday we were actually looking at the situation in Turkey and hold on, sorry, we have Shagonas back. We have another caller from Shagonas. Good morning, Shagonas.
Hello, good morning.
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 You're on the air. Go ahead, caller. You're live on here.
Okay, I have two issues I'd like to raise.
Sure.
First one is this question of the situation with respect to food security. I champion nutrition security more than food security. I would also hazard a guess that if we put our farmers, the small farmers, the medium-sized farmers, to work by giving them reasonable and decent incentives, they could produce what we want, demonstrating their capacity to do volumes and to do quality and stuff and so on. And if we only looking to fill our bellies without looking to see how we could maintain our health, and don't look at the nutritional aspect of what we produce, then we'll be in some problems. Second thing is, we have to transport goods, we have to transport people and so on in the region. We ain't talk a long time now about ferries and so on, but we're not seeing it. Why isn't it happening? I mean, the islands in the region are close apart. Every island seems to want to have a national airlines, but these things are not cost effective for short hauls and so on. Mm-hmm. And I am very interested to find out, are we going to get some good ferries, fast ferries, for the region? Maybe, of course, more than one. So those are the issues I wish to raise. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. That's an interesting point. I'm not too sure how that will work. I don't know if the ferries we have for the inter-island ferry service would be suitable, because you're going now into deeper waters when you're going from nation to nation, as much as we're in an island chain. We do have a caller from Tunapuna. Good morning, caller.
Hello. Good
Hi.
Morning.
Morning, you're live.
To Miss Karen Yunus. Good morning.
Yes,
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll very much like you to take me seriously with what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Concerning this flooding, what are we doing about the northern ridge? Because the northern ridge is contributing a lot to the east-west corridor flooding right now. And we have a lot of problems taking place there with people illegally building and cutting down the trees and whatnot. And the rivers, they are overflowing and breaking its bank when it's coming lower down. And up to now, we haven't seen the Ministry of Works come to fix those banks and the ravines and everything and open the waterways and these drains and whatnot to take the water out. I don't know what will happen when the next set of rain comes. Okay, and I want to say concerning wastage of money, unemployment, and our people suffering, all those buildings that we spent money and they're halfway up and they're falling apart, all those money could have come in to create employment for people, and forget about those buildings. They are rotting and falling down and nobody doing nothing about it, and it is of no use to the population. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah, and I will just say this in relation to what the lady said. I think the key to this whole thing is that the government has to make a decision that food security, development of agro and agro-industry is important to the country, and of entrepreneurial sector to go with that. And therefore, there has to be a coordination between the Ministry of Planning and Development, Ministry of Public Utilities, because you've got to have implementation and enforcement, illegal quarrying, all of those issues, and the government has to take responsibility for the state of play. That is my opinion on the matter.
But then there's also town and country planning with regards to houses going in flood zones.
But that's Ministry of Planning.
Houses going up on the mountain. And this is just one more thing, Karen, where I say public sector reform, another aspect that needs to be fixed, because the caller, we have two callers now, one about Laventille, Belmont, one about the Northern Ridge in general, right? And Karen, we saw what happened in Turkey. When you hear about the fact that contractors and government officials facilitated them to cut corners, to build faster, to build higher, to build where and in ways they should not have built because they're on fault lines. And we're not on a fault line, but I could see where some of these things, what the caller from Shagona said, yes, and eventually the whole Lady Young will come down into Belmont because we did not regulate these things properly.
Yeah, I think that's the key. The key is the government has to take a priority and put that as a priority. There's so many benefits to be obtained from doing that. You can't just, you look at what are the benefits to the country, giving us food security, creating entrepreneurial opportunities, creating an agro industry in Trinidad and Tobago that we can not only feed ourselves, but up the Caribbean, and even go to stores like Harrods, selling chocolates, selling our high-end products. There's so many opportunities for us, but the government has to take the lead, and they've got to allow people who are not in the 1% and controlling everything in this country to be able to participate and feel as though they're part of the country.
But do you think it's fair to say, to some extent, the population is not really calling for this? This is not what the population is calling for. They just want relief. They don't necessarily know what to ask for.
Because you have put in their minds a mindset. There's a mindset that you have created to allow for that sort of thinking, and it suits those in power. You've got to undo that mindset. And the first thing, which my suggestion is, bring in Interpol. You see the work Interpol is doing all of the islands. You see what they did in Jamaica. They have a base in Barbados. Bring in Interpol to deal with the drugs and the money laundering, and then we stand a chance to be able to address the corruption in this country.
Do you think that any local politician would be willing to fight against the pre-existing system where...
Now that's why you need a change. That's why you need a change. You can't just give up like that, you know. If Martin Luther King did that, if Mahatma Gandhi did that, if, I mean, you could go through history. He spent his whole life in prison in South Africa. If everybody thought that way, then there will be never any change. You just can't have that thing. You won't get the hundreds to do it. You just need a good leader. And once people believe in a leader, they will be prepared to follow. You can't give up like that, because if you give up like that, then Trinidad is a lost cause. You can't do that. You can't afford to do that. I mean, this is what you are leaving for your children. I don't know, Sean, just in case.
Me?
I don't know. But the next
nephews,
okay. But the next generation, we care about the next generation. We care about our country. And if we don't put an end to it and somebody doesn't stand up and take a position, we are a lost nation. So don't give up. We cannot afford to give up. We cannot afford. And by the way, as I say that, look at what Errol Fabian. Could you imagine telling Errol Fabian he cannot sing any anti-PNM song? He posted it himself. I'm not saying that. He said it. They're telling me he can't sing any anti-PNM song. And then you had Chalk Dust. I saw shame for him. I saw shame for him. They cussing the PNM. What else? So a man used to sing, the driver can't drive. He reduced himself to, like, if you say, what happened? Basically, well, what happened to all you? You're not grateful, but you're only cussing PNM. Well, he better go and retire. She didn't get to the semi-finals and finals, and it's a good thing he didn't make it there. I saw embarrassed for him.
I think,
but he had stayed home.
This is, and I'll always say this: these things, they don't really work when you say you can't sing about the PNM. Who are you fooling? Right? The whole point of, the PNM is the government. The Calypsonian should be allowed to sing about and criticize the government. It's not even to say, oh my gosh, that is so evil. It doesn't matter. They could be the best government that we've ever had. They could be best government in the world. Calypsonians still should be able to sing about and criticize the government.
And that is Kai. So when I saw Chalk Dust saying that, I said, well, we're going through. We're going through.
Because the thing is...
yes, Mr. Chalk, that's Hollis Liverpool, Dr. Liverpool. I am saying that to you.
If you are a supporter of the PNM, what do you expect people to sing about? The opposition? The opposition not doing anything? Or the opposition did not do what? They're not in power. They can't do anything. They're just there to be the check to the government. The government are the one that executes policy. The government are the ones.
Nelson Gate, there's AV drilling. There's AV drilling, Nelson Gate, there's Paria. There's so much material there. The Reggie Moore with the Miami appeal, they tell him he can't participate. There is the Farisal Rawi, how many missteps he made. Marley McDonald. There's so much material. There's so much material. None of them could find anything to say because you know why? He who pays the piper plays the tune. And that's where this country...
I will say this, Karen. I have seen this in the international entertainment industry. And eventually it fell apart because when you were trying to basically support corporate media and corporate products and the audience was rejecting it, eventually the audience will reject you too. So if you think you're going to gatekeep the message, at some point people will just say, well, you can't be serious with what you're singing, with what you're saying. We're just going to reject you.
But they're afraid of it.
With the people we want to reject anyway. But Karen, we're more or less out of time. I want to thank you for coming on. And this was a topic that we've been waiting to speak about for quite some time. We wait now, I guess you could say, to see how the energy side at least unfolds. And I guess you and I, we will be praying and hoping that agriculture at some point, agriculture and tourism at some point, I think those are the low-hanging fruits of unearned potential.
We have to deal with the crime though, for
tourism. And I'll just say this to wrap, folks. First of all, with regards to the cost of green energy, yes, the Prime Minister is right about that because, like I said before on the show, Germany tried to go green, but they still had to keep natural gas plants and running both at the same time because sometimes the wind stops at night when there's no sun. It increased the price of power by 4 times. And electricity, you use more electricity at night. So there lies the interesting thing about solar. Infrastructure gets more complicated at a national scale than at a personal scale. But so, the Prime Minister's not trying to mamagaya when he says we're going to stay with regards to fossil fuels. There's reasons for that. There's reasons for that. And then finally, well, we're more or less running out of time there. But finally, I'll just like to say, folks, we're all in this together. I know it's carnival season, but please, 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 things are still happening out there that are regretful. So please look out for each other, especially when you go out to these fetes, especially when you see a friend drinking and you know that he drove or she drove.
Yeah.
Please, please, please look out for each other. This is Talking Point. Kindness Shishera, the good lady herself, Sean Michael Small. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Have a good Chris Carnival. See you after Carnival. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
WESN. Winter temperatures after a huge earthquake 9 days ago. Some people are miraculously